Are you or your clients looking for a regular income solution with compelling returns to diversify your portfolio? If so, Neighborhood Holdings may be a great option for you. Listeners of this podcast will appreciate that public markets can be turbulent and finding a good private credit fund can be tough. But Neighborhood's track record, transparency, and investor alignment sets it apart from the pack. With nearly 10 years of consistent performance and a target net yield of 8 to 10%, Neighborhood has a track record of providing monthly income to investors without the volatility of public markets. How do they do this? Where banks invest in mortgages up to 95% loan to value, they also make borrowers jump through a lot of hoops. Many borrowers in transition aren't able to meet those hoops. Neighborhood has partnered with banks and brokers to provide quality borrowers with temporary financing secured by first mortgages at an average loan to value of less than 60%. Where other mortgage funds might take more risk by lending against construction, bare land, or jumbo loans, Neighborhood is focused on your average residential borrower who owns the average house in the neighborhood. Plus, their variable rate with a floor mortgage pricing benefits investors when interest rates go up and mitigates downside risk. Check out the link in the description or visit neighborhoodholdings.com to view the offering memorandum or speak to your financial advisor for more information. That's neighborhoodholdings.com/Loonie Hour. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that this information discussed today is not intended to be or construed as investment advice. Please consult a professional advisor before putting a loonie in any of these financial markets.
The dirty secret is that no one's ever going to get paid back or have the shortest memories when it comes to investment. We just got to get Keith into Bitcoin.
Hey, there's a bubble.
Welcome back to Loonie Hour, episode 174. As always, joined by the three amigos, Boomer, Ice Cap Management, Green Shirt, Rich Diaz. What's going on? McGill.
Yeah. You can tell that I'm running out of clothing and I need to do laundry.
Were you a McGill guy?
I am a McGill guy.
I didn't know that. I knew I didn't like you.
What is the
I know. I'm a
character
snob.
name? What's the mascot name? For
Oh,
McGill?
they changed it. I don't want to get in trouble. Let's just say I don't approve of the new name.
Did he get canceled?
Yeah, he did.
What was his name?
I think it was the McGill Redman, and now it's, I think, the McGill Martlet. I should know, but I don't.
What the
It's been
hell
a
is
long time
martlet?
since I think it's a type of bird.
Oh man, that's really pathetic.
No,
It's
I
a
don't know.
bird. The
Yeah.
McGill birds.
I'm more upset they took down the McGill James McGill statue off the front lawn. I think that's outrageous. Let's
stir it up here.
Let's
What
stir
else-
it
what
up.
other
I think it's
statues that we
crazy
pulled down lately.
I think it's dumb. I think that's dumb.
So
But
they
anyways,
renamed the
otherwise-
mascot. They're pulling down statues. They
Yeah, but
renamed.
That's so 2021, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I feel like we're not gonna have to deal
So
with
what's
that
wrong
crap
with
anymore, but-
renaming the Gulf of America then? What's wrong with that?
Here we go.
I don't know. I'm just being
Keith-
honest here. You
He's
just...
on the sauce, trying to get us canceled right in the first 2 minutes of the show.
By the way, guys, Boomer feels awesome these days. I know it's pretty easy to talk about like negative things because it's all over the news and everything. But hey, I feel great. I exercise every day. I'm eating really well. I have positive conversations with people.
All
and
his savings are in US dollars. Yeah. Okay.
No, but seriously, I just feel I'm in a very happy spot. And I think everyone always seek that out. If someone, a little bit of suggestion, from the old guy to younger people, but if someone is taking energy out of you all the time, then, reduce that exposure and just be happy. Take care of your body and your mind and soul. So, Rich, don't let McGill wear you down, man.
No,
You
I'm
go
in a
there.
great mood.
You put that statue back up. You push him up. This is your chance.
Oh boy.
How about you, Steve? Where are you today? You look like you're
I'm
not
in
in
Whistler.
Kitsilano.
Yeah, Whistler. They got a good dump of snow, so it's nice. The benefits of paying $8 million for a tearing down house is you live an hour and a half from the mountain.
We're gonna talk about why it's so expensive in a little while, aren't we?
Yeah. We have a very special guest for this week. We have the Fentanyl Czar, Sam Cooper's coming on the show. Sam wrote the book, Willful Blindness.
Wrote
Wrote it.
He read it.
Typewriter.
Anyways, he put a book together called Willful Blindness, which I highly encourage you to recommend or to read. Essentially, it's a book, and we had him on the podcast before, so this is his second appearance. But He basically wrote a book on all the money laundering, the fentanyl that is pervasive, particularly throughout Vancouver. A lot of that ended up, of course, into real estate. He was actually like a real estate reporter for the Vancouver Sun back in the heydays of like 15, 16. So I remember him and I used to have a lot of chats back then, and kind of kept in touch over the years. He moved to Ottawa. I think he's got a bounty on his head for sure, at least from the triads. But yeah, he's kind of just blown the doors wide open on everything that's happening sort of underground. That I think, truthfully, a lot of Canadians are quite naive about. And we'll get into that because I think it's an incredibly important story, particularly as it pertains to the tariff wars that we're in today, right? Which is, Keith, last Saturday, after our interview with Danielle Smith, which I highly encourage people to go check out, Trump came out with the 25% tariffs. Trudeau and all the premiers immediately fired back. And then, was it by Monday or Tuesday? They're on pause now for 30 days because apparently we're actually going to get serious about our border. We're going to have to install a fentanyl czar. And so we'll see. But I think we have to figure out what exactly does Trump want. Is there actually a fentanyl problem? Because that seems to be a topic of conversation and debate on Twitter. So we figured, why not bring on the czar himself?
And he was into it before it was cool. So let's give him a lot of credit there. I mean, you guys know I gush about Sam Cooper. I think he's an amazing investigative journalist. I think a bunch of journalists are actually stepping up these days, in all fairness. But I can't wait to talk to him about it. So I'm going to save my question for when we start. But there's loads of good stuff going on, Keith. So I don't know. Do we want to get right into it? Or?
Well, it's like a very hot button topic. Like we had a couple other contacts that we had reached out to as well, that are in sort of national security. And they were, of course, they're just not able to talk about it on a podcast such as this. I mean, so it's all kind of behind closed doors. Sam is one of the very few, when you go and talk to these people, that are not allowed to speak publicly about it. The first name they'll say was, you guys chat with Sam Cooper. So Sam is in it. He's in the weeds. And he's one that's actually able to talk quite openly about what's happening. So again, I think it's an incredibly important conversation. I hope that we get a lot more academics and people that are spouting data to actually listen to what he has to say, because I think it's incredibly important. So,
and that's what I like about, I started off today with, the whole optimism, banner, flag, or statue for Rich. And, so I'm going to say a few things today that people they may immediately, or they're told to react the opposite way. But since Trump became president in the US over the last, was it January 20th? I think, I don't know what the date was, something like that. There's now been the tide has turned or changed. The pendulum is now swung. And now, whether people agree or disagree with a lot of things that are happening, now the conversations are happening, and they just were not allowed before. So the whole, is there a drug problem in Canada? Yes or no? I would imagine there's a drug problem in every country, every city, every province and state and territory we're involved with. So that's good. And we're going to talk about a few other things as well with, these big policy changes. But I think, though, the opportunity is now available. And I think everyone now has a chance to make their life and their surrounding a lot better than what it was before. That's my view to get started.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, just again, to your point, Keith, which is, think about how many of these conversations that, I can tell you, us at the Loonie Hour, we had to, during the pandemic, even mentioning names like Trump and things of this nature, mentioning them on a podcast and then putting them on YouTube. Like, we're always like, okay, is the algorithm, are we going to get shut down? You hear all these stories of people's YouTubes just, oh, you mentioned COVID and we didn't like what you said, and boom, it's gone. Basically being deplatformed. And I think it seems to me like, again, that tide is kind of turning where I don't know, for me personally, I feel a lot less pressure. I think there was times where we're like, hey, we'd have conversations before we hit record and be like, how do we sort of walk the line here without upsetting the moderators on these social media platforms? And now you've had, Zuckerberg that's come out on Joe Rogan saying, oh, we had to silence people. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like media is such an important component of fact finding and
Of society.
yeah, society. So hopefully having conversations like Sam Cooper on, and you can have them, hopefully it looks like more freely. Um, we know
And
that
you
we know
guys,
that
to be fair, you guys have muzzled me a lot over the last
We have.
78 episodes.
It's
what was the
so
bill?
true.
Well, but Rich, what was the bill that the Liberal government had implemented? They were trying to pass through.
They
We had
did.
Michael. Yeah, we had Michael
Which one?
Geist on the show, which is basically a Canadian.
Well, there's Bill C-11. There's Bill C, that's about online, and then there's the online harms bill, which I think is Bill C-293, and then there's the one with respect to oil and gas and climate change, which is Bill C-69 or 59. I always forget the numbers.
Which is probably the most ridiculous one
yes,
that's out
totally
there.
Completely insane. The one where you can't say things like natural gas has less emissions than coal, which it does, by a factor of 1/2 or 50% or whatever.
Rich, I
Yeah,
think the painting on the wall behind, I saw the eyes move then. You're being monitored still.
I
can
probably
tell.
am. But Steve, it's not just like the negative things that I think the conversation has shifted. I think it's a lot of the positive things. So like again, just to keep with Keith's sort of theme with it, which is optimism and opportunity and how we can go forward and change things for the better. I just saw this survey, which I think is really interesting. It was strong support. It was support for pipelines. Agree or disagree? Canada needs to ensure it has oil and gas pipelines running from sea to sea across the country. Agree or disagree? And the lowest was Quebec at 74%, which is extremely high for anything. I mean, I don't even know if there's 74% of people in Quebec who want the Montreal Canadiens to win the Stanley Cup, let alone build pipelines from coast to coast. So I think that, it's amazing how that is something now that's a topic of conversation. Oh, and sorry, just to source the poll.
To your point, Premier Legault there was actually
Yeah.
just on the media saying, "Oh, no, we shouldn't. There's no pipelines that are going to be coming through Quebec because
he walked it back. He walked that back the next
Did he?
day.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's walked that back. I think people misunderstood. Not to blame it on the language, but I think people sort of understood the tone of it. He was saying that there hasn't been an appetite for it. And by the way, I think he was 100% right in his assessment. I think that the zeitgeist has shifted, right? And that's what I think Keith was alluding to earlier, which is people have now gone, oh shit, maybe this was a good idea. Now, some of us, me, have been saying this for years, but it's nice to see that people, have changed their mind.
And this,
anyway.
Yeah, so this new spirit, animal spirits that we call it in the market world, it's now out. They're not going to get it back
right
into the bottle. It's out there. So, a very polite suggestion for everyone that, you're hoping we go back to the way the world was in December, or back when, from a Canadian perspective, Ottawa was very strong with one side, and everything was going down that road. I'll give you a very strong suggestion. That's not coming back. That world and environment is now gone. And it's my view, this now where you can get angry at me. I think that was an extremely negative world, not just in Canada, but for America and for Europe and so forth. And I say that because everything was about restricting opportunity to get better. It was
more productive.
It was, absolutely, Rich. It was penalizing everyone for doing something. Whereas now, what's coming out of the policy changes in America, like if you're just following this whole, is it Doge? Is that how they pronounce it, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And again, people might get angry or some people get really excited about it. It's finally going through government spending and figuring out, okay, what is useful for the country and what isn't. And I mean, clearly they're finding a lot of inefficient and, a bit of cross-eyed spending taking place for the
I mean, let's be
Americans.
honest, like any government, there's a lot of grift in there, right?
And I think we have that in Canada, and
course we do.
definitely in the UK, and Germany, and Japan, and Australia, and definitely in China, you name it. So I mean, the world, we have this enormous wave coming at us, and this debt maturity, new debt issuance at higher and higher rates, and I don't think we can get through it, truthfully. It's just gonna come over, and this people will be floating around everywhere when it's done. Uh, ex except for ice cap people, of course, will
So
be
was it in
okay.
the US?
But,
There's
but
in
Steve, wait 1 second.
2025. Go ahead.
But I think the improvements, though, we can get with government spending efficiency and becoming more productive with spending and investment, it could help to offset potentially a lot of these negative waves coming in. See, that's the positive part again, Rich. The
Yeah.
opportunity is there.
9.2 trillion of US debt will mature or need to be refinanced in 2025. US now holds 36 trillion worth of government debt, meaning 25% of the total is set to mature. So
And that's just federal debt, I would imagine, correct?
Yeah, but
I
states
believe
states and municipal debt is much, much, much lower because constitutionally allowed to run budget deficits. So
well,
yeah. I
And
mean,
the
Yeah,
there's
no, but-
municipal, there is municipal debt in America, but it's almost always tied to specific projects. So if you're building a bridge, you take out debt, and that debt is linked to a specific project. It's not like in Canada where you have, half of our general government debt, let's say just, quick numbers here, is provincial, and the other is federal, which is why I always get pissed off with the government when they say our government debt's really low relative to GDP. That's bullshit because they always exclude provincial, whereas in the US it's much different math.
So are you suggesting that municipal and state provincial financing is always at optimal levels? Let me share with you a little story.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So way back, so in Halifax, we have these two amazing bridges. Like it's one of the main features of the city, coming and going. And the very first one, it's called, we call it the Old Bridge. It's McDonald, Old McDonald, go that way if you want to. But so the legend has it, this thing was financed back in 60s, 70s, whenever they did it. But they borrowed in Swiss francs, is my understanding. And why do they borrow in Swiss francs? Because the rate was a lot lower.
Oh boy.
They did that. Guess what they forgot to do?
Hedge it. They forgot to hedge
Yeah, and the currency kind of got away on them. And I no doubt those kind of things are happening still today. And even then,
How long ago was
people
that?
I think it was in the 70s. People can research and, tell me, yeah, this is sort of right or wrong. But I'm guessing the 70s, they would have made bridges.
it. Yeah, they don't build
60s,
bridges
80s.
anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, in the last 20 years, Canada has extreme strength in the currency. So, anyways, that's a kind of an interesting story. But anyway, let's get back on track here.
Well, yeah, I think without further ado, I think we should bring on the fentanyl czar himself, Sam Cooper. So let's jump over to that interview right now. The fentanyl czar himself, Sam Cooper. Welcome back to the Loonie Hour.
It's great to be back, guys. I was the commissioner of AML. Mark Cahotis crowned me that in BC. It never happened, but maybe the fentanyl czar will happen now.
Yeah, you and Mark Cahotas look like you're still chatting, and I know he's still got some interest in Canada, what's going on there. So we'll get into that, shortly. But I wanted to have you on the podcast because we've been talking about these tariffs, and every Canadian's going, "What the hell? These are our friends. Donald Trump's, he's bad. What's his motive here? 51st state? Is he just trying to?" So the issue is the sort of the debate in Canada today is, basically, is he doing these tariffs because we actually have a fentanyl problem, or is this completely fabricated? He's just using this as a guise to basically crush us economically, because he wants to take Canada or whatever. That seems to be the debate. Is people generally think Canada does not have a fentanyl issue. So I figured, why don't we get you on the pod and chat about it? What's your take?
Yeah, I appreciate you coming to me. I've been working on this for at least 10 years. I'm seen as the subject matter expert on this in CSIS. People have literally told me that. I'm seen as the subject matter expert by people in Taiwan, the US government. I talk to US officials. So the thing here, everyone knows that Trump has a variety of motivations, and that can include, getting a better deal for his base, which could be, the Rust Belt, or, Americans that feel that their jobs have been offshored. So I won't discount that, but full stop. I'll give you the straight goods here. British Columbia especially should be seen because it is in the same context as the west coast of Mexico and Panama in terms of an international node of transnational drug trafficking and money laundering. So I'll just give you some data points. My book, Willful Blindness, talked about a case where a BC, apparently legitimate but not businessman connected to the casino money laundering scandal was caught with 85 tons of precursors for methamphetamine and fentanyl. Remember, precursors, these are buckets of liquids and, little pieces of powder that when you press them up into pills with their additives, you get tens of millions of pills, enough to kill everyone in Canada, a few times over. So that's one case, 85 tons. These are data points. The super lab in Falkland. Okay, why is organized crime putting industrial scale labs out in the BC boonies in the mountains? It's because, there's only one or two cops there, and they have direct access to British Columbia's ports. This has come from none other than Delta's police chief and mayor say that one of the fourth busiest port in North America, the Delta port, less than 1% of containers are searched. This is on the record. This municipal high-level politicians are saying this gives organized crime a direct access to Canada's west coast. Another figure, 2022, 1,000 kilograms of fentanyl precursors were caught by CBSA. That is one load caught, and that's a huge load. Again, enough to kill everyone in North America if that's like pressed up in an extremely hot or toxic batch of fentanyl. One more at that Falkland lab, which everyone that's medium information knows about, busted recently by the RCMP. Look, that's a DEA American investigation. I'm aware that the Americans don't have confidence that we will be able to prosecute anyone in that case, but 95 million doses of fentanyl was the capacity there, and the RCMP confirmed that was outbound. They didn't say it's going to America. I think they've indicated, in other countries, so that could be Japan, Australia. But everyone in Canada should know they don't have to take off the record sources or even data points from me. They can read Canadian criminal police intelligence reports saying we are an export nation of fentanyl, right? So Donald Trump is stating what Secretary of State Antony Blinken under the previous administration came up and told Brad West, the mayor of Port Coquitlam. Interestingly, he didn't go to David Eby. He went to Brad West, who's been a strong voice on this. And he said, remember, this is the Biden administration. British Columbia and Canada have a deep weakness in their laws regarding fentanyl and organized crime. And America needs them and wants them to be a partner on investigating fentanyl. So I could go on, but these are facts. Canada, especially British Columbia, has a huge issue. And I'll mention one more time, the issue here, if we really wanted to get into the weeds, is high-level Hong Kong businessmen that are involved in Chinese shipping entities. They're the same ones that the American government has got Panama's government to say that we're going to get out of business with these people. These are the same guys that have infiltrated Vancouver's port and have for decades. I'll leave you with this. I'm working on stories currently where my high-level North American government sources are saying, look, Trump is harsh, he's brazen, there's a lot going on in his negotiation tactics, but he's right. Canada essentially can't police this stuff. We've got a huge problem.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, like one of the stats you hear people, they're it was in the Globe and Mail saying, oh, drugs seized by U.S. authorities at land borders is, the northern border, and it's just this tiny little speck in comparison to, say, the southwest border. But to your point, I mean, it sounds like, if 99% of the cargo at the ports isn't being inspected or checked, I mean, if you don't police it, I mean, how do you catch it? So I don't know if you have any rebuttal to that sort of data point that was put out by the Globe and Mail.
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, it's put out first. by our public safety minister. It's put out, as I know, by Justin Trudeau's prime minister's office staff, and then it's dutifully picked up by CBC, the Globe and Mail. Guys, I know now, since I've been in Ottawa for 5 years, this is how people get stories. They become sourced up with the prime minister's office. And I'm sorry, I've said it openly. It's a corrupt prime minister's office, and the Americans know it's being corrupted. That is, there are concerns, in open source and in policing that bad people are surrounding Justin Trudeau and his staff. So, I mean, just to your point, when you hear a narrative from the Justin Trudeau government on fentanyl, in my opening sort of salvo here, I've given you the data points that show British Columbia is used as a node of transnational drug trafficking. The bigger or equal concern is Canada's economy, especially Vancouver, Toronto, is used as a massive hub of money laundering activity in real estate. In banks, we don't have to rehash the Toronto Dominion Bank case, which I know, came out very shortly after our last interview together. Look, the American government, I know, and I'll report in more detail because it's very important. The American government has been wanting to go after the top tier of money laundering in the world is Chinese sophisticated organized crime run out of Toronto and Vancouver. And that's what's running the trafficking for the Mexican cartels that do the distribution of the fentanyl. So 1% caught at the border, whatever it was, 40 kilograms of fentanyl, that's nothing. It could be attributed to the fact that the US government has given Canada a lot more trust along that very unguarded border, whereas the Mexican border is treated much more like a military sort of situation and will increasingly be seen that way. But, I believe a lot of fentanyl is going out through our Vancouver port and being transshipped into different locations and very easily could be coming back in to the United States. We know it's coming into the New York port, Los Angeles, and having, a circuitous route which might go from Vancouver down to Latin America and back up, highly possible. But what I want to leave here is, people need to do the math and look, 1,000 kilograms of NPP coming into Vancouver's port in 2022. These are like death scale loads coming in. Vancouver's a hub and it's going elsewhere, not just America, but other countries.
So Sam, this is it's not shocking because we know this, of course. But what is more shocking from my question, as this will come out next, is this seems to be very obvious if people are taking the time to research it and find it and have the conversations. Yet what you just shared with us has received extremely little exposure over the last 4 or 5 days. And, the whole country, in my words, got whipped into a frenzy about something that we were being accused of that is not even close to being correct. And I know the answer to this, but maybe can you talk a little bit about, the media and the government and everyone they're either trying to suppress it or they're not able or willing to talk about it. And obviously we know where you've come from this, but it just seems to be incredibly frustrating. But this conversation with us, of course, on this amazing, new media platform we have here, this is another step in the right direction to get the story out. But talk a little bit about the unwillingness of this story to be truthfully told.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the fact that a lot of my, I would say, colleagues in podcasting or the people that read the Bureau or the people that pick up on willful blindness are people in finance, right? These are the people that, they know how to read data points. They know how to connect dots. If they get it wrong, they're out of business. They lose money, right? So they tend to be very logic and evidence driven. They tend to be a little bit more apolitical in my, estimation. That is investors, financial analysts. They care about getting it right. As I said, if they get it wrong, they're out of business, right? And so I've always, been sort of attracted to that world. I didn't go down that path, but that has been sort of a basis of my reporting style. So how many people in North America or the world are sort of trying to use those, hedge fund analyst or intelligence analyst chops and write in that way? From my experience in, corporate media, David Baines, he was incredible at the Vancouver Sun, but he got sued so many times, even though he was never wrong. There was just a huge disincentive to uncover what everyone basically knew was, just the level of organized crime in Vancouver securities markets was insane. And it continues to surface, I believe, in BC's economy. Um, Look, there are good reporters in Canada, there are good reporters in the United States. But having been in that world for 20 years, I can tell you they're good editors, they're good publishers, but the level of sort of herd thinking and politicization is real, and I'm not just talking about, which party that publication tends to favor, but very obviously in Ottawa, there's, a huge slant towards the Liberal government. And some of it is personality based, some of it is just that the Liberal government is the one that tends to want to fund media that's taken a dive, right? So, I mean, I could go on, but there's just a lack of incentives for reporters to dig in, care, and get it right. And I mean, some of the people I see online, the ones that discount sort of the Chinese election interference story, they're the ones, that their whole mindset seems to be very influenced by, politicians and political staffers and a swamp that needs to be drained, put it that way. The swamp in Ottawa, in some ways, could be as bad or worse than Washington, probably, because I'll end right here. Look, the RCMP and CSIS, lots of great officers, but I know because I'm told, I see evidence, and I believe the leadership at the top is politicized and it doesn't want to get to the bottom of things. And I think I'll leave it at that. But we have deep concerns, not only with capacity of being able to prosecute serious things, but I believe corruption and misdirection.
So can I just jump in there? So that's where my question comes from. We got an email from somebody, and I won't mention their name, but they work in law enforcement. And they sort of reiterated a lot of the points that Danielle Smith made in our previous podcast. And then when I asked sort of follow-up questions, and my follow-up questions were, where are the drugs coming from? Where are they going? How much are we talking about? I even asked, like, is it realistic to stop it? And we got an enormous email back with details and sources. So I just want to thank that person. I know they're listening. My question is related to the prosecution, and to me, it seems like such an obvious win from a political standpoint. Drugs bad, we are good. We're going to fight the drugs, so we're going to prosecute some people, any people, even low-level guys. But what we're seeing is actually sort of the opposite, where people who get caught with incredible amounts are never prosecuted, even in a token way, even in a superficial way, they're not. And I think that the gentleman who, I just gave his sex away, the person who wrote to us said, the police at the low level who genuinely care are sort of they're running out of steam, or how do I say, the moral sort of fortitude that you need to do this. What is the hang up here?
Yeah, so it's a legal hang up, a cultural hang up, and a corruption hang up. So let's start with legal. In my book, I say that Canada lacks racketeering laws. Canada, and that's the racketeering laws are what the US government used when, to pick on a group.
What's racketeering? Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what's racketeering?
Racketeering, is when organized crime gets together in a way where the people at the top don't have to pull the trigger, don't have to be holding the bag of cash or the narcotics. They give the directions, and that whole system works for them. But if it can be proven through wiretaps or what have you, that this is the top of the organization than if you get the guy in the middle or the bottom with 7 kilograms of fentanyl if he's driving through Saskatchewan. You know, if you got a racket and you've got a guy at the top who runs a trucking company, let's say in a diaspora community that's a huge donor to the Liberal Party of Canada, and you know that guy at the top is the boss of that organization, you can take him even though he doesn't have his hands on that narcotics, right? So as I say, and I know, the American government was so concerned that the Italian mafia was not only running organized crime, but had its hand, right in the throat of the economy, in the docks, in the garbage disposal, in the politicians. You get that racketeering going and you take it out. That's what we lack in Canada. And you may ask yourself, why doesn't Bill Blair, Dominic LeBlanc, or whoever the revolving door of public safety ministers is, why don't we have a racketeering law? You start to ask yourself the question, well, who would it point to that would bother the public safety minister? And I'm not making this up. I'm hearing this from Canadian law enforcement. They say, look, Trump is rude. Trump knows we have a problem up high in Canada. So is it willful blindness or is it direct corruption? I'm not, willing to say too much today, but I have deep concerns. So there's that, look, we need a RICO law. We can't prosecute money laundering. We have a lack of trust now where the Americans have been sharing intelligence about the worst criminals in the world that they know are running money laundering for the cartels. They know China is essentially funding the cartels. That is, China raises the money, does the logistics, sets up all the money laundering before the fentanyl is even dealt by the cartels, right? So China's running this, and they're running it from Vancouver and Toronto. The American government wants to go in, but they can't, right? And so this is where we've come to with Trump's very direct and brazen threats. There's something deeply concerning underlying it. The last point is, as you said, even at the lower level, I remember a case in British Columbia. There was just some average 50-year-old kind of retired guy that was caught in Chilliwack running a whole trunk load of fentanyl pills to Alberta, and a Mountie caught him and then, got him to admit various things in the interview room. Case was thrown out because someone judged that the Mountie had triggered his dog to search without asking the guy, can I search, right? It was an unjustified search or something. So this kind of thing goes up and down through Canada's system. Law and answer, but I believe all to the point.
So I think it's, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, one real quick question for time here. Okay, so the Canadians, Americans, they agree 30 days to get the House in order or tariff discussions come back on again. The Canadians have said, we've already agreed to do this stuff anyway, so you look not very smart here, Mr. Trump. Yeah. What on earth can Canada actually do to make it better, regardless of whether they're being watched on or reporting back to the Americans?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Again, there's a media narrative, and it's even in the American media, who hates Trump, obviously. I mean, that is certain portions of their media, that Canada was already ready to do this. No, they weren't. Okay, the fentanyl czar is a real position. Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier, got that right. Obviously, she was having very high-level back-channel talks. America wants a fentanyl czar that is someone that can be trusted and credible, that's going to facilitate the cooperation of the FBI, the DEA, with the RCMP and CBSA that are no longer trusted. That's the key, right? American intelligence sharing, American cooperation with Canada has stopped since we had it stopped for a long time. So these parties need to be brought back together. And a fentanyl czar, what can we do in 30 days? Look, the Americans are not stupid. If we pick someone that's like a Justin Trudeau PMO or a Mark Carney PMO lackey, the Americans know it. And then we got 25 or more back on us again, right? Who should who should Canadians blame if we get 25% tariffs? I would say Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, and the Prime Minister's office. So pick a Rick Hillier. I've said a Brad West. I can name some good former RCMP officers. We'll see. If they pick someone bad, if they pick the head of the CBSA, which I've seen suggested, the Americans will go, I'm sorry, we don't trust the CBSA. What else? Was Trump, kind of outplayed? Hell no. I believe that in the next 30 days, the Americans will want to see documentation saying this counter, organized crime strike force of the US and Canada. We want something on paper that says, if the DEA says a cartel boss is in Vancouver, let's get a wiretap on him and give credible evidence. Canada will have to do it because, as I wrote in Willful Blindness, it came out in testimony in the Cullen Commission that the Americans wanted to go up, as they say, on a Sinaloa cartel boss in Vancouver. The RCMP could not even get a wiretap done just because our legal system is broken, dysfunctional. The Charter of Rights controls it, to the extent where criminals are using the Charter as a shield. What else can we do? Or what else will the Americans want? I think they'll want memorandums of understanding that perhaps even they can have greater visibility into Canadian banks. So as I saw, one wise political observer say, we're now in the Germany-Greece era of Canada-US relations, right? It's like they don't trust us anymore because they've been hearing, okay, for years, we'll get on it, and nothing happens. So when JD Vance says, we're now in the stage of consequences, we asked nice, you didn't do anything. Again, a lot of Canadians hate to hear that, but it's the truth. I'm sorry, it's the truth.
Well, I think that most Canadians don't like to hear that because they don't believe that little old Canada, all the good neighbors and good people that we have here, that we could possibly be running this large narcotic underground system. I mean, it's incomprehensible to the average person. So, and obviously because it doesn't really get reported in our media, right? So I think that's the big one. The other thing I want to bring to you, and I think this probably sort of summarized, I know we're short on time here, but you're working on a story right now with BC Premier's David Eby's legal narcotics,
legal
basically.
fentanyl. Yeah.
Legal fentanyl. Can you kind of touch on what's going on there? I mean, it's a breaking story, and I think it kind of summarizes everything we've talked about here today about the issues that we have not only as a society, but in our government as well.
Yeah, it's a huge breaking story. I just posted a story for the Bureau.news. The BC Conservatives have a leaked BC Health Ministry audit, which looked into the Safer Supply program, which was started in 2020 under a law from the Trudeau Liberals that allows, in the past, only licensed pharmacists could give out, pharmaceutical opioids to addicts who are using, as they call it, toxic fentanyl. And this was supposed to hopefully get them off the drug or give them a safer version. But what this audit found is that organized crime, together with corrupted doctors, corrupted pharmacists, and just using addicts as pawns, has found a way to infiltrate or co-opt, tens, 20 of millions of these pharmaceutical opioids are being distributed through community pharmacies, and addicts are going in with and able to get, I believe it's something like up to $10,000 worth of opioids prescribed to them. I'm not sure if that's a month or a year. I'll go back to my story after we talk. And that's just getting sent straight to organized crime, who are dealing that product nationally, provincially, internationally. And it's not just selling, pharmaceutical opioids. This includes fentanyl patches, various types of drug that are supposed to be a replacement for illicit fentanyl that's killing people. The gangs are selling pharmaceutical opioids to get more money for their fentanyl trafficking. So the scale of this is only growing. But what this leaked audit suggests is that David Eby's health response Justin Trudeau's health response to our opioid crisis has not only made it worse, that is, more people will die, but corruption has gotten right into the BC Health Ministry, and it's a growing story.
I mean, yeah, I think it's infuriating. I mean, to be honest, it's really not overly shocking. I mean, just
Yeah.
I don't know. Somehow this got suggested as a good idea. I don't know, Rich 4, 5, 6 years ago to start giving out free drugs. Obviously it's turned out the way I think any rational person would have conceived. But yeah, I mean, so do the cartel, for example, do they take a lot of these opioids and then lace them with fentanyl and then sort of redistribute, or what's happening there?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how, if they take, let's say they call them dillies. I'll just, I don't want to get the medical term wrong, but this is stuff that comes from Purdue Pharma,
Hmm.
legal opioids, replacement therapy, and they're sold, I believe, directly. So they're sold to, could be high-end clients. They're sold at scale. They're taken from British Columbia, sold across Canada and internationally. So that tells you that transnational organized crime is uh, is taking opioids bought by the U.S., bought by British Columbia taxpayers, Canadian taxpayers. They're adding that, let's just call it opioid liquidity or opioid volume to their holdings, and they're selling it for profit to, produce more fentanyl, I believe, deal more fentanyl. As you say, they could be just taking it in a vat and mixing it up with fentanyl. I don't know exactly, but what we do know is it's adding to organized crime proceeds. It's adding to the volume of illicit fentanyl that's being trafficked.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I guess, Sam, we want to be respectful of your time. We know you got to jump, but we wanted to thank you again for coming on and enlightening the people. And hopefully we can have you back on, because I think, this is a developing story. We'll see what the next 30 days brings. You have my nomination as the fentanyl czar, so hopefully you have your hat in the ring, so to speak. But can you remind people where to go if they want to read more about all the work that you're doing? I think it's brilliant stuff, but can you just give us a quick plug?
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for your time. I agree. Let's keep the tempo up because this story is only growing. Willful Blindness. People can find the book. It's back in the top 50 in Canada after about 4 years, which is, I don't know, that's something. I know that it's being read a lot in the United States now, and people can go to thebureau.news where I'm breaking these stories, on a daily basis. And as for the fentanyl czar, look, I'm serious. I don't expect to be, I don't come from the military. I'm not law enforcement. No one's going to nominate me to be the fentanyl czar, but I am the subject matter expert in Canada. And Canadian police and intelligence know this. To the fentanyl czar, I will very gladly share my knowledge and information with them pro bono. I'll do that because I want to do it for Canada. If anyone offers, I'm here.
You heard that loud and clear. We got a lot of listeners in the government circles here, so hopefully you get the nod to be a part of that. And like I said, Sam, we want to thank you so much for coming on. It's incredibly important work that you're doing.
Thanks, guys.
I don't know how we top that, truthfully, but yeah, it's just eye opening, right? I just think there's just.
But back to the optimism theme, the optimistic theme that we started today with. What Sam just shared with us, it doesn't look good, guys. That's a horrible.
That's the optimism.
Well, let me bring it out here. But the optimistic part about this is that, if everyone plays in line with the way they should, and this gets discussed more, there should be, now you're never going to find a solution, but an improvement of what's happening. And then that should, from an economic perspective, increase our productivity as a country, from a family perspective, social perspective. It can only get better from here. I don't know how it can get worse, unless you don't want it to get better. Now, I know there are a lot of groups out there in that.
Well, that's the thing. I'm so confused that everyone's just turning this into like this big political thing of like, oh, I hate Trump, and like, it's even if he wasn't proposing this, like, why are we not supporting getting rid of drugs and being tough on our border and like policing this and having like proper like laws where you can actually criminalize people and put them behind bars. It's like this is like common sense stuff. So whether it's Trump pushing you to do it or not, I mean, I think every Canadian
Yeah.
should be advocating for cleaning this mess up. And I think if you look hard enough, that there's plenty of evidence out there that suggests this is a real problem.
And
Well,
with yeah, so one more thing with, and Rich, you have you can finish as well. So now that we know this and we know what the Americans are looking for, like I said, people, the Canadian media whipped into a frenzy. Everyone, they say, "Oh, this is a victory. We pulled one over them." And one of my good contacts in the U.S. who's into the DC swamp and everything, he said, "Keith, this is now about enforcement, right?" And now the Americans will be, I like it now that, Canada, we have to report to our parole officer every few days. And if there is no improvement or movement with this, the tariffs are coming back in less than 3 weeks. They are coming. But the other concept that was introduced during the whole tariff, discussion or whatever it was about the banking system in Canada. And I think that's where it comes back to AML and things like that. Because Sam did mention that as well. Now things are starting to make sense when you push it together. And it is not this chaotic, you know, person going off his mind. There is a reason for it all.
As someone that
I
just,
just wanted to. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. No, I was
Go
just
ahead.
quickly. I think the one thing I would say is sort of a challenge to Canadians to stop believing the lie. It's enough now. We know the truth. We know that Canada has a massive, massive problem. It's, in my view, it's not only is it undeniable. I think to deny it is borderline nefarious. And I think that I would challenge Canadians to either write to their representatives, to call them, to comment below posts that you see that willfully are blind, to quote, Sam's the book, the title of Sam's book, that are willfully blind to this. Millions of people are affected. Families are affected. It's not a benign issue that we're not impacted by. And I think that to listen to Sam and then to say, well, it's no big deal. Well, Trump's just trying to get at us. I think you're not being intellectually honest. And so I would challenge Canadians to sort of step up and, in my view, do what's right. I don't mean to be so preachy, but I think that this is a real opportunity for us to sort of push back and say no mas. This is the only thing I sort of wanted to say.
It's well said. I mean, so Keith, just curious from like a market perspective as well, as we kind of bring this back home, is how do you navigate this, right? So I'm just looking at this and saying, okay, so one day you've got 25% tariffs, the next day you don't, you've got 30 days to clean it up. I mean, based on what Sam just told me, I'm not optimistic that we're going to clean this up in 30 days, that it's going to be sufficient for what Trump wants to see. Tariffs come back on. As a business, as a consumer, as a capital allocator, how do you navigate this?
I mean, first of all, you have to be, prudent about introducing your capital to markets now. So you do it in different tranches and things like that. But again, this path that we expect it will continue. And what that path is showing from a tariff perspective, Canadians are focused on Canada and that's it. I can tell you, the Chinese are not off the hook at all yet. This is going to be 10%. That's going to go up. But the next big one that's going to, another front with the American tariff war, it will absolutely be the EU. Rich, that's the European Union. They are going to get it right.
Wait, let me write that down. Hold on a second.
Yeah. EU.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
But jokes aside, that is going to be hit next. So the volatility is going to absolutely continue. Currencies will have this fluctuation. I mean, I think I did suggest online, I know I have in private conversations, that if it was resolved, Canadian dollar would rally 2, 3, 4, 5 cents, and that's what's happened so far. If we are not able to meet the enforcement rules that's being put on us right now, I would suspect that will be given up in a hurry. But overall, the whole tariff strategy now, that is going to reduce global growth, going to slow growth, recessions, credit spreads will blow out and everything. I think whereas 2024 had literally zero volatility in financial markets, I think 1 month was negative. That was August. That was it. I think this year is just going to be spectacular. You're going to see plus and minus 20% swings across different fixed income markets, equities, currencies, commodities, and you name it. This is going to be an exciting year. I'm excited for it from an insensitive way.
I mean, that's a great place to wrap it up. I mean, it'll force you to continue to listen to Loonie Hour because there will probably not be a whole lot of dull moments this year in 2025. So, as always, guys, we hope you enjoyed that. I highly encourage you to check out Sam's work. Support him, his work financially. He's an independent at this point, and we appreciate your support of the Loonie Hour. We get guests like Sam on, Danielle Smith, because of your support and your support. All we ask that you continue to share this episode with at least one friend or family member. And the larger the community grows, the larger the audience grows, the better the guests that we get. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.